Welcome to r/MaliciousCompliance, where we share stories of people conforming to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. Thank you, friends, for subscribing, likes, and supporting in the comments. And today's first story is, you don't want me to do my job correctly? Fine by me. Sorry for possible spelling mistakes. This was written on my phone. I'm dyslexic and this isn't my first language. I was at work when I got called in by my manager. She told me that someone had complained to her that I always start working the second I enter the cafe and shop, and that I wanted to finish all the work right away. They told her that I had my own structure of how I do my job, and when I do my job, and they didn't always agree with when I did my job. So I asked her why no one has ever approached me about it. I always ask the people that I'm working with what they want to do, and when something that I do affects them, I tell them or ask them first. She told me that they felt like I would still do my own thing and ignore their wishes. I then learned that they was actually one person. Let's call him Richard. Now, I don't dislike Richard, but Richard is a mess. He has ADHD, he's known to procrastinate, he doesn't do a lot while we work together, and he needs multiple breaks, even though we're only technically allowed to have one 30-minute break. Now, I always accommodate to the people that I work with. I do have my own schedule of when and how I do things. I always follow the rules. I'm easily stressed and overwhelmed, and I'm able to be a more pleasant person when I have structure. I've also had a surgery, and that means that I have a limited amount of strength and energy. So during an 8-hour shift, by the 6th hour I'm exhausted and working hard to finish the last bits of work. I also don't like to relax, stand still, because then my thoughts catch up to me, and that's something that I try to avoid. That means that if I'm working with someone, I do both my job and at times half of theirs. I believe that we also finish on time when we're finished an hour earlier. One reason is that a lot of things can and often go wrong last minute. Our coffee maker can break down, our pen machine might stop working, the fridge can flood, a lot of customers can come in last minute and drop their hot drink over the mop floors and more. This is not me being dramatic, all these things just happen. Now, if you're ahead of the game, it's not that bad. I tried to explain that, but my manager told me to try and accommodate to Richard's needs more. So I told her that I'll just leave the planning to Richard, so he wouldn't feel bad about it anymore. That's where the malicious compliance started. I had to work with him every day that week. He came in late as always, and I told him that I had a conversation with our manager and that I'll be following his schedule to do my job from now on. He seemed happy about that. Now, normally I count our cigarettes and clean the first oven, which is a 2-hour process. You don't have to do nothing during those 2 hours, but all the programs collectively last 2 hours. I didn't do that because he didn't tell me to. I didn't bake at the appropriate times, because he had an issue with that. I didn't clean our first coffee maker, didn't count the first register, didn't check the products in advance and more. Now, our shifts are from 15 till 23. At 20, he asked me what we needed to do. Now it's his job to fill the store, which he hadn't done. The whole store was a mess and we hadn't done anything. So he told me that it was okay to start with all the tasks. Now, normally I still make the coffee, handle the cash register while doing all the other tasks. This time, however, I couldn't, because I had about 6 tasks that needed to be done on time for us to finish somewhat on time. So he had to handle the cash register while working in the store. We ended up finishing a little before 2, and we left the store a mess. We got many complaints in the morning because their shifts became more difficult because I didn't prep the store for them like I normally do. However, I wasn't done. The next day I showed up and did the same thing. He still only wanted to start at around 1950 with all our tasks, and again we finished later. My manager told me, okay, just split all the tasks and do your thing at your time, and leave his tasks for him. I was fine with that. He seemed happy that I started to do my own thing again. However, he believed that I would go back to doing it all. This time I was done with all my tasks at 20. He still hadn't done anything. At times he would just grab a couple of bottles of water and half stock the water, but that was about it. I wasn't bothered by that because it wasn't my job. At 22, he looked at me and asked me what we still had to do. I told him I'm already done with all my tasks, so after we close the store, I'll clean the last coffee maker. I looked at him with confusion. I don't know about what you still have to do though. I didn't keep track of it this time, I said. He looked at me in shock, but I ignored him and went to help our customers. He quickly ran to the back and started to grab all the drinks that needed to be refrigerated and started to stock the store. Of course, I would have loved to help him, but as I suspected, the pen machine no longer worked, and everyone had to pay with cash. This slowed everything down, and there was a large crowd coming, and I needed to help them. I helped them the whole hour, until closing time, and cleaned the last coffee maker. I was done. We had closed at 22:45, and I was done at 22:59. I looked at Richard and he looked at me. There's so much that still needs to be done, but I do get it if you need to leave, he said while looking at me expectantly. Now, normally I would have taken the bait and helped till we were done with everything and pushed past my limits. But then before I could even say anything, he said, "Great, can you do this and that really quickly? Thanks," while grabbing his phone and putting his headphones in. I no longer felt bad and grabbed my stuff and clocking out. I walked back to him with my jacket on, and I smiled at him sweetly. "Thanks for understanding. I do really need to go, but good luck." I walked away feeling great. He had done nothing all day, and I was done picking up his slack. I knew that it would take a while for him to finish, and that I wouldn't keep working twice as hard to make sure he didn't have to work. I also messaged my manager to inform her that I was done with everything and had to go home directly after closing time, but Richard was still working to finish his job. You'd think that was the end, right? Wrong. The next day he came to me feeling very upset. He claimed that I chose the simplest tasks and that he had to do more, and that was the reason that I finished first. It had nothing to do with the planning, but everything to do with the tasks. So we switched tasks. I took care of the store, stocked everything, and jumped in at the cash register when needed. I still managed to finish with everything at 22, kept everything beautifully stocked and decided to stock everything, and not just the beverages. We closed our doors at 22:45. I refilled the empty spaces left by the customers, but because I had stocked everything well, I was done at 22:50. I clocked out and left. He was still not done with basically anything and forgot many of the tasks. I actually got a compliment because the store hasn't looked that good in weeks. He got a complaint because he forgot to turn off our milk machine. That we use for our cappuccinos and cafe lattes. Now, something to note about that machine is that every 45 minutes that it hasn't been used, the machine automatically cleans itself, aka hot water comes out of it every 45 minutes. And he forgot to turn it off, so by the time that the morning team arrived, they saw a mess of water all over the floors. He also didn't bake any cookies that he's supposed to bake the day prior, because in the morning they already have to bake a lot, and the cookies need to cool off before they're sold. So yeah, the next day he apologized and asked me to keep track of my own work and his, and to please tell him when it's smart for him to do his job. I agreed and the manager was informed. We finished 23:15, later than I would like, but it was a great improvement. He also apologized for seeing me planning everything as me wanting to play the boss, and admitted that he didn't have a great concept of time and how long it took to finish most of the tasks. We're good now, but there was malicious compliance. It's not too terrible because we both get paid for overtime hours, so we both benefited from this lesson. I meant to write that we both got paid overtime and not that we don't get paid overtime. Edit. I'm genuinely so effing upset right now. Richard had switched shifts so he can work in the morning. He then did nothing that the morning shift should do. So I came in and everything was a mess. Let's say that that's fine. Okay, I had to work harder to finish it all, but that's not all. I don't know if he did this on purpose, but he took the only key that I'm supposed to use to close the store. I've looked everywhere, but I can't find it. I've spent more than 2 hours looking, and I'm so effing stressed that I'm literally shaking. The store's now a mess. My manager's trying to fix something but can't. We tried to call him, but he turned off his phone. So it doesn't matter if we'll finish early, because we have to wait until 2:30 when they can close the station that the store is at, because we can't just leave the store open. I don't know if this is some kind of petty revenge, but I'm just so upset and mad about all this. Edit again. Thankfully, we can go home earlier than expected. Someone who works at the cafe and is close to him went to his house to get the keys. So hopefully everything will be alright. I'm still annoyed though, but that's just me. Maybe it's in my head, but I feel like he did this on purpose. First, he changes his shift to work mornings. Nothing is done in the morning, which gave me more work. He just happens to accidentally take the key. He shouldn't even have the keys. Then he just happens to turn off his phone all day. So even though we finished on time, we had to wait. That just seems like he's trying to teach me a lesson, but maybe I'm just seeing things that aren't there. I don't know. Ugh. Edit after the drama. I had to work again, and I worked with a colleague who works with Richard, 27 years old more often. He also knows that when he works with Richard, he basically has to do everything. He did talk to me about Richard's personal life, and told me that he officially quit going to school because this year was his last attempt at graduating and he did not. He explained that it just made Richard feel very upset, which is understandable, and that he would now have to work full-time. I do feel bad for him, and this might have been his way of lashing out and just dealing with this stage of his life. However, I didn't necessarily want to be the one dealing with it. Then there it was, the light at the end of the tunnel. I looked at the schedules and he was nowhere on the schedule. A little background information. The cafe and store that I work for has 4 different locations in the same train station. There's the smallest little cafe, where we only sell coffee and little snacks. A larger cafe and shop that's often not buzzy at all, but we do sell a lot more things and bake more there. The second to largest and most visited cafe and store, which is where I work most of the time. It's a lot more crowded. It's the center point of the station, and we have all the stock of our store, but also the stock of the busiest cafe store. And the busiest cafe shop that attracts both the people at the shopping center, because it's directly in front of the entrance of the station, and the people who are traveling by train. There are often 3 to 4 people working here instead of the normal 2 that work in the place where I work normally. I opened up all the schedules, and then I just saw his name. All of his shifts were now at the busiest cafe and shop at the whole station. The idea of working there stresses me out. Even with 3 to 4 people, the speed at which you're supposed to be working is insane. No one gets to do just nothing. That's literally close to impossible, because there's nowhere for you to hide. There are 2 entrances with rows of people just coming in from the shopping center entrance and the train station entrance. The laziest people still have to be productive there, because they have 4 coffee stations, and you have to constantly fill the store or bake foods. Now because he's quit his schooling, and he'll be working full-time, he has to work at the last cafe and store. This is because he's been working at the overall cafe and store for about 5 years now, so he should be able to handle it. Now, the people who work at the busiest cafe and shop aren't as forgiving as people who work at other locations. At all the other locations, when someone has no other option, it's possible to do all the work by yourself, if you don't take breaks, and work hard during the 8-hour shift. Now, the same effort for them is comparable when they have 3 people for the first 6 hours, and then 2 people for the last 2 hours. I also get to now work at least 5 days a week at the smallest cafe, for about 2 or 3 weeks, before working both at my normal place and at the smallest cafe. It'll take getting used to because you work all alone, and you have very few tasks that you can do. I think that both the shift of where Richard is going to work and where I'm going to work is going to be beneficial. Richard will be in a more high-energy, high-productivity, and high-consequences location, where he needs to work hard, smart, and fast. And I'll be in a very relaxed and minimal tasks location, where I need to learn how to be calmer and more relaxed at work. I'll need to learn how to be less anxious, and not take everything as serious, which might be possible in a more low-stress situation. This is just a side job for me to take care of my family and pay for college, and I have to learn to not act like my life depends on it. Hopefully, we'll both improve from this change. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and have a great day.